10 feet of moving ice floating on 13,000 feet of freezing water. The North Pole was a cold and bitter place. At the top of the globe, direction has no meaning. Where is north in the North Pole? Is everywhere south? People have been trying to reach the North Pole for centuries. The discovery of the North Pole was a captivating story of betrayals and questions. Who really discovered the North Pole? Did they really reach the top of the Earth? In the early 1900s, the world map was almost finished. Few places were unknown, but the North Pole was one of them. People were so intrigued by the idea of what could be on the top of the globe. Was there land? What would they find? Whoever went up there would be famous, but the journey was treacherous. The ice kept moving, and the North Pole was incredibly difficult to find. And so the competition started, and with it, attention seekers who were willing to lose their lives stood up to the challenge. Among them were two people named Robert Peary and Frederick Cook. They would both go on to compete for the glorious title of the first to reach the North Pole. Robert Peary was an American explorer who had one goal in life. He wanted to be the first person to get to the North Pole. His primary motivation was fame. According to an article written in the Smithsonian, Perry wrote in a letter to his mother, "Remember, mother, I must have fame." This desire for fame is what drove him to relentlessly try to get to the North Pole. The story between Perry and Cook is very interesting and full of stubborn characters. The craziest part is that they used to be friends and colleagues. During one of his exploratory expeditions near the North Pole, Perry broke his leg. His crew paused the journey on the coast of Greenland, and luckily, they had brought a doctor along with their crew. None other than Cook. Cook mended Perry's leg, and they had to stay on shore for a while. During this pause in the expedition, Perry noticed that Cook had surprising skills and could be used well in his future voyages. After they returned to America, Perry asked Cook to join him later, but the doctor surprised him by refusing. He said that he wanted to go on his own expedition, not be a sidekick. This ended their friendship and created a rivalry that lasted for the rest of their lives as they tried to get to the North Pole. Let's pause the drama between Perry and Cook for a second and talk about the native Inuit people who lived around the North Pole. They acted as guides and teachers for explorers looking to venture into the unknown. People from warmer areas did not know how to use dog sleds, make homes out of snow, and the Inuit people taught them how to do these things along with many surviving skills in the Arctic. The Inuit guides proved invaluable in their expeditions, and without them, a lot of journeys would have gone very badly. They deserve a lot of credit for finding the North Pole. Now, back to the story. In 1908, Cook set out in a final attempt to reach the North Pole with his crew. A year had passed with no sign of him. Perry decided that it was the right time to go to the North Pole himself, and he started his expedition. Perry chose to utilize the SS Roosevelt for his expeditions. This ship, which Perry designed himself, was built to get them as close as possible to the North Pole. He made sure that it was made of wood. Wood? Why not metal? Isn't metal stronger? According to seahistory.org, Perry chose wood because it was more flexible than metal. So when the ship plowed through ice, the chances of it breaking was much smaller. He did not need this boat to get him all the way to the North Pole, but he needed to get as close as possible. When he got close to the North Pole, he would exit his ship and continue the journey on dog sleds, along with many of his customized tools and equipment. Perry made it to the North Pole with a lot of evidence to support him actually reaching there. He makes his way back home and says he got there in April 1909. According to an article on Smithsonian, in September 1909, a New York Times magazine said, Perry discovers North Pole after 8 trials in 23 years. Does this end the story? Was Perry the first to discover the North Pole? The story is not that simple. While Perry was busy plowing through the ice on the top of the map, Cook claimed he got to the North Pole first. He claimed to have reached the North Pole in April 1908, exactly 1 year before Perry said he discovered it. The newspapers didn't know who to believe. Perry and Cook would continue to bash at each other for the glorious title. The American public was also engaged in this exciting battle for fame. Readers' interest was fueled by funny newspaper cartoons depicting the competing rivals. Eventually, the majority of people accepted Perry as the first to reach the North Pole. With time, there was evidence that proved that Cook was lying. In fact, it wasn't the first time Cook lied about a discovery. According to the Seattle Times and other sources, Cook claimed to have reached the summit of Mount McKinley, the highest peak in North America, in 1906. He had a photo of himself on the peak of a much lower mountain and made it look like he reached the summit. For most, the evidence is overwhelmingly against Cook. The story and scandal did not end here, however, as people were not able to prove Cook guilty at the time. Now, what if I told you that neither Cook nor Perry were the first to reach the North Pole? Well, according to National Geographic, Matthew Henson, an African American crew member, and two Inuit guides were the first to set foot on the North Pole. Matthew Henson was an extremely valuable companion to Perry. He obtained many skills, like learning the Inuit language, riding dog sleds, and much more. If legends were true, which could be very likely, then Matthew and two Inuit men had gone to the North Pole as much as 45 minutes before Perry. At the time, blacks and other minorities were mistreated and not very appreciated. We have seen many times where a black person or a non white person made a discovery and someone else took the credit. Henson was not recognized for being the first human to go on the North Pole until many, many years later. This should be a good lesson moving forward that people who made great achievements do not always get the awards they deserve, and that all people should strive to give people what is rightfully theirs. The end of this story brings us to a question. Why is this relevant? Apart from the fact that we can take out morals and lessons from this story, many countries were trying to get to the North Pole in the late 1800s and early 1900s. This was like the space race in the 1950s. It was very important that the US got to the North Pole, and Perry represented the hopes and ambitions of many people. Another reason this discovery is important is because the North Pole was one of the last unexplored places on Earth. With this discovery of the North Pole, cartographers could finally patch up the world map. My views on the discovery of the North Pole are not easily defined. Perry's discovery is great, and he definitely deserves the award that he received, but I don't think he had finished his part. He had a mighty crew who he was incredibly lucky to have. And what credit and thanks did he give them? None that we know of. Also, he committed treacherous actions. Apparently, he stole six Inuit people and brought them back to a university for study. Four of them quickly died from diseases they had never encountered before. The discovery of the North Pole was a mind boggling story of betrayals, lies, and risking your life for fame.